Welcome to Repstugog. Fuck my life. It's time for a review. We still have plenty of launch titles to sift through, and it didn't take very long for us to get to the first licensed title of many for the PlayStation 2. Orphen, Scion of Sorcery is a turn-based role-playing game published by Activision. I'll get into what I mean about that shortly. Before I do that, I want to get into the property of Orphen. The game's source material are the light novel /manga /anime known as Sorcerer's Stabber Orphen. Sorcerer's with an O-U-S, not E-S-S. Orphen is a man. It's actually quite the long-standing franchise, and there's a new anime series in development at the time of me writing this. Despite this, it doesn't seem to have too much of a foothold over here in the West. Only recently are the light novels and manga getting translated for Western audiences. The 1997 anime did end up getting a dub back in the mid-2000s though. I was actually curious and checked out a few episodes for myself, and it wasn't half bad. Same goes for the dub. I doubt it was mostly the original script, but it managed to get several genuine laughs out of me. So if the characters for this game interest you, I'd recommend the anime at least. The game, however, is another story. Orphen could be considered a turn-based /action RPG hybrid, where you explore areas in a 3D environment and then at certain points you're thrust into encounters with enemies that are separate from the former. You can't move in these fights, but you can equip yourself with certain actions that are mapped to the face buttons on the DualShock. There are a few types of moves you can choose from. There's a melee attack, a ranged single target attack, an area of effect attack, and a shield. Each of these moves have elemental variants, so there's some strategy involved in picking the right element for an upcoming battle. These moves all have names too. Names you'll be incredibly familiar with as Quentin Flynn puts on his Jack the Ripper impression and screams them at the top of his lungs every time you use them.
The hand of Pyro! The bite of lightning! The hand of Pyro! Yes!
The first few times it was funny, but there's only so much I can take. The fights themselves are where the game gets unique. I can safely say that I've never seen an RPG battle quite like Orphen's. Like I said earlier, you can't move freely in battle. The game will choose to move you if you, say, use your melee attack on a target. Then Orphen, or whoever you're controlling, will run to the best of their ability towards the target and try to attack. Flying enemies obviously can't be melee attacked, so they require ranged attacks to be killed. Most of the time they can be dispatched quickly, but what might not be evident in this footage is how much lag there is in between attacks. You have to wait at least a second before being able to attack again. This just straight up sucks. It doesn't feel good to fight in these encounters at all, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. If you're attacked while in the middle of charging an attack, or just about to use it, you'll have to sit through that waiting period. Same for missed attacks, which is a little more understandable, but since these battles are in real time, it's actually a lot easier than you think to miss something. A creature could dodge your Hand of Pyro with its idle animation. In encounters where it's just Orphen versus a large amount of enemies, your only recourse is to constantly mash the attack button, since you need your attacks out ASAP. Otherwise, you'll just be stun locked by the enemies attacking you one after the other. Even targeting the enemies feel off. I don't even know how you could do it until a few encounters in. To be honest though, the enemy encounters aren't that big of a deal. Despite how it may look, there aren't random encounters. Every encounter is predetermined, and they're actually fairly rare. There's maybe 2 or 3 in between boss fights, which is where I have my real bone to pick. Fuck these fights. God damn it, fuck these fights. Like most games, Orphen has a handful of boss encounters that are considerably harder than standard encounters. Orphen usually has to tackle these alone. Oh yeah, wait, I should mention that sometimes you will have party members during battles. They help with crowd control, but also make the fights completely incomprehensible, as if they needed help with that. Okay, anyway, back to the bosses. These fights are large set pieces that usually have a dynamic arena, such as jumping from the mast of a ship or being pushed back down a long corridor. From a spectator's perspective, they probably look pretty cinematic considering the year this was released, but that's all the praise they're going to get. In practice, these fights are grueling, awkward, and fucking brain dead. There are only certain moments when the boss is open for attack, but the window of attack is so small it either takes forever to find out where it is or requires near perfect inputs, since it's right before or after an attack that would damage you. The boss on the boat is a standout example because you have to use the hand of pyro to damage it, but since it's so far away from the projectile, by the time it reaches the thing, the attack ends up missing. You can trade blow for blow, but that'll only get you so far since most bosses out-damage Orphen. The fire boss in the corridor is also really bad about this. You're on a timer, because if he pushes you back too far, you fall into a pit and die. But in addition to that, the only conceivable way I could think to damage him was by attacking with my melee weapon in a rhythmic pattern. There wasn't a tell for when he was going to use his fire attack, so I just had to take them on the chin until I literally couldn't anymore. I think the worst fight of them all though was the fight in the pyramid. This fight was tedium incarnate. You have to hurt the guy way over in the back, but to hurt him, you have to defeat the people in front of them because they'll block your path with a melee attack and ranged attack. The only problem is the targeting system is so terrible in this game, at least 2 of them have to be killed before Orphen will target the guy in the back. And the problem with that is that they fucking respawn. Quite fast actually. I could manage to sneak 1 attack in, if I was lucky, on the target before one of them respawned and I had to restart the process all over again. You would think the party members would help, but they didn't in fact. They would kill enemies before I even wanted them to, making the window of attack against the boss that much smaller, if not non-existent. Once I beat the first route in this game, I couldn't bring myself to do the other path. There are some addendums that I'd like to make regarding Orphen's boss battles. You see, I originally recorded and wrote this review just about a year ago now, and ended up scrapping the project after finding out all my footage was corrupted. So when recording for a second run, I was obviously a little more experienced when doing these fights that I originally bashed my head into. First off, the skeleton fight isn't nearly as bad as I had made it out to be. Even if there are skeletons in the way of the main target, you can still use their ranged AoE attack to strike it. Second off, and I'm a little unsure about this one, but it seemed like the fire boss that pushes you around would only go for a specific move if you shielded his push attack. I'm only unsure because he stopped following this pattern about halfway through the fight, so I'd like to apologize for making these fights out to be more miserable than I had once fought. However, that doesn't redeem this combat whatsoever. Even when you know what to do, you still have to fight between the several seconds long cooldown on attacks, input buffer, and busy ass screen. I'll never be able to consider Orphen's combat good. At its best, it's somewhat nice to look at. At its worst, it's a fucking mess that'll leave you dumbfounded over what they were trying to even pull off. Yes, you heard me right. This game has a branching path system. Very early in the game, you can choose to talk to Magnus, the blonde boy, or Cleo, the blonde girl. No, they're not actually related, surprisingly. I chose to go with Magnus on this playthrough because Cleo was voiced by Jennifer Hale doing her bitchiest Princess Morbucks impression.
Ah! My luggage! It's gone! Oh! My favorite dress was in there!
I wasn't going to deal with that for an entire playthrough, but Magnus was only a little better, since his performance was like a piece of wood grew blonde hair and was named Magnus.
Master, I did it! Wow, that's amazing. Once in 1,000 years? And we happened to come along at just the right time? Well. That just proves the pureness of Sephi's heart.
Magnus's story involves a girl named Sephi trying to find her lost lover on this deserted island that the group wash up on after their boat is attacked. Time travel hijinks ensue and the couple is reunited, only for you to be sent back to the boat to do another scenario on the island with different characters. Once you complete all 3, you get access to the true ending, but I'm sorry everyone, I couldn't be bothered to do such a thing. I'm a busy man. I got a lot of PS2 games to review. I absolutely do not recommend playing this game. If it seemed like I was too harsh on this game, it's because 1, it's pretty damn bad, and 2, it has some kernels of good in it. The battle system, while an absolute trash fire, is pretty unique, and with some changes, I could see it being fun. And the resolution is being upscaled, sure, but the graphics aren't that bad here. For a launch title from an unknown studio, color me impressed. I wonder what they went on to... Oh my... No fucking way. Quintet made this game? Quintet made this game. Okay, wait. No. Quintet didn't make Orphen. This was developed by a studio called Shade, and while their Wikipedia page redirects to quintets, they're not the same company. Some members of Shade, including its president, were former employees, but no, not the same. Okay, thank God, I almost had a heart attack. To think the people who developed Soul Blazer and ActRaiser made this game, thank God that's not true.
The pinnacle of the sun!
The pinnacle of the sun. Fire. Charge up to summon the elemental spirit.